Recording in progress.
Chodesh Adar, Tafshin Lamed Dalet. Now, this by the Rebbe, as we've seen in many different Farbrengens, the Rebbe started talking about the highlights of the upcoming month already on the Shabbos Mevarchim of the month. And Shabbos, this is a Sikha from Tafshin Lamed Dalet. It was Shabbos Parsh Mishpatim. That was Shabbos Mevarchim, not like just like this year. And the Rebbe speaks about the idea of this month, the entire idea of the upcoming month of Adar, which is about, the common denominator is about Simcha. And he's going to speak about the uniqueness of the Simcha and Adar and the lessons of it, which also actually impact the idea of Bitochon, because it talks about how a person is supposed to go about his parnasses, making a living, and so on. So let's begin from the second paragraph on the bottom of the page, Ois Beis. So after speaking about, and the Rebbe mentioning that the entire month of Adar, the common denominator is about the idea that Mishenichnas Adar Marb B'Simcha, when Adar enters, we increase in Simcha. So the question is, what type of Simcha? The Simcha Gufa, concerning joy itself, there could be many different types of joy, appropriate and corresponding to the cause that is the reason for the joy. In other words, the reason why there are different levels of joy is all a result of what is the reason we're being joyous. Since the joy is a result and an outcome from a specific event, movement, so it's understood. It corresponds to the cause that causes it. So therefore, in this case, let us examine the cause, and now we'll understand the power of the Simcha, the month of Adar. The reason for the fact that when Adar enters, we increase in joy, because it's the month that was transformed for them from sadness to joy, from mourning to holidays. We're talking about the miracle that occurred in the days of Purim. But it was such a powerful cause and such a powerful miracle that not only not only did it influence and affect that the days of Purim should be days of joy, but rather that all the days of the month should be days of joy. Not only did it affect on the days following Purim, it should be joyous. That makes more sense. You have a holiday, and then you have like the after effects of the holiday. So you have, Purim is such an amazing holiday, it even leaches over into, and overflows even into the days following it. But that's not the uniqueness of Purim. The main novelty of the Simcha of Purim is that it also affected days prior to it, that they also became days of joy because of this miracle, which is a really powerful type of joy and a really powerful type of miracle that will transform and cause that the joy should be even backwards, if you will, even retroactively to the days prior to the occurrence of the miracle. Top of the next page. Since the joy of the month of Adar is connected with the miracle of Purim, that it influenced and affected all the days of the month. It's understood this is a much greater joy than regular. Not just a joy that has a measure to it and a limit to it, in a way that he does not even know. Meaning, the idea of not even knowing indicates it breaks through all barriers. Loy medidus vagbolus, without any boundaries and barriers whatsoever. So that is the resultant joy. We said before that every joy has a unique cause, which is the reason that brings it to that type of joy. So that's what we're going to discuss now. What was unique about the joy of Purim that brought to such an over-the-top type of joy that influenced the entire month and without any boundaries, Adar Yada. Second paragraph from the top. The idea behind this is Gzeirus Haman, the decree of Haman that from it was the salvation of the Jewish people in the days of Purim. Was in the lowest extreme, in the most worst situation, that there was nothing lower than it. Like we say in davening, when commemorating and davening and benching, when we're commemorating the miracle of Purim, the decree was against all the Jewish people, from youth until elderly, taf and noshim, little children and women. Since Achashverosh then ruled the entire known world, the entire world, there was no place even for them to escape to, because no country was free of his influence. Also concerning the time, you couldn't push it off. This is all going to take place at the same time, and therefore there was no avoiding it. So this was in the ultimate possible way, in the way that was we found no other decree against the Jewish people like that up till then. For example, in Egypt, there was no decree against the girls. There was no decree against killing the adults. There was enslavement. There was only killing the baby boys, and then the adults had to be enslaved and so on. Here was the entire Jewish people was going to be eradicated. The same thing with Hanukkah. It wasn't attacking the entire Jewish people. Let's skip over one paragraph to the second paragraph from the bottom. Since the decree wasn't the worst way possible. Therefore, the joy on the Jewish people being saved from this decree was in the ultimate other end of the spectrum, the other extreme. Simcha, a great joy without any types of measures and boundaries, but in such a manner that one does not know to distinguish, because they're totally between cursed Haman, blessed Mordechai, they're totally out of the boundaries of any type of logical thought. Simcha kizula matzinu binyan, such a type of joy where you're completely out of boundaries, we do not find in any other thing and any other time throughout the year. Even the joy of Yom Tovim, that is a positive commandment in the Torah. It says, V'samachta b'chagecha, it's a mitzvah to be joyous on Yom Tovim. It's still in all even that it's measured, it's limited. It's explained in Shulchan Aruch, and the Alter Rebbe brings it in his Shulchan Aruch. That Bezdin were obligated to appoint officers in the Yom Tovim to make sure that the joy should not break bounds of propriety. Because as opposed to the joy of Purim, there is no such halacha. Since the joy of Purim is beyond any type of measure and any type of boundary. To such a degree, it wouldn't even help, even if you did send an officer to patrol and to control this, since the person is holding by a state that he doesn't know the difference between what's Mordechai, what's Haman. I was obviously saying this in a joking manner, so it's impossible to talk to the guy because he's Adar Yada. The Tamadavar, and the reason why the joy of Purim surpasses the joy of even other Yom Tovim that are their joy is mandated minat Torah. Like we said earlier, because the decree of Haman was the ultimate extreme, as opposed to, as we mentioned before, when they went out of Mitzrayim, like we say in the language of the God, the Pare only decreed against the males. Also, Mitzrayim was not about annihilation. Mitzrayim was primarily about servitude, enslavement. That they made them work very hard. And when we talk about the miracle of going out of Mitzrayim, we speak about going out of the house of servitude. It doesn't say about being saved from annihilation. As opposed to Purim, Esther said, if we would have been sold for servants and maidservants, I would have been quiet. In other words, Esther was saying, the problem here that we're facing is not servitude, but rather because Esther was saying that the decree was something even worse than enslavement. Concerning the joy of Purim, we find two aspects that they are on seemingly two extremes. On the one hand, Simchas Purim kshurim matzal saguf. The joy of Purim is connected with the body of the Jew being saved. Like it's known, the explanation of the latter ones, the commentaries on the big Shulchan Aruch, concerning the difference between the celebration of Chanukah and the celebration of Purim. Chanukah was primarily a spiritual decree, to make them forget your Torah. Therefore, the way we celebrate is more in the spiritual. Therefore, the Yom Tov of Chanukah was established to praise and give thanks to your great name. It wasn't primarily established in eating and drinking Chanukah and partying and joy, and surely not in the joy of becoming spiced, as it says. In other words, becoming tipsy. As opposed to Purim, the decree of Haman was on the body. Therefore, the Yom Tov was established with partying and joy. That has to do with physical eating and physical drinking, because the Yom Tov was associated with the physical destruction of the Yidden, not their spiritual destruction. So we celebrate and mark the salvation with a physical celebration. Though that is true, and this is a theme that the Rebbe often mentions, but on the other hand, the decree of Haman was dependent upon a certain condition. Only concerning those that are called Yehudim, literally Jews. The idea of being called Yehudim, which is really something, a new title, not like the Yidden are called in earlier Sfarim in the Torah and Nevi'im, they're called Yisrael or Bnei Yisrael, but rather they're called over here Yehudim. The word Yehudim shows Shazau Inyan Ruchni, that's a spiritual matter. Shade Yehudi Pirushoy HaKoifer B'Avodah Zarah. The Chazal say, who is called a Yehudi, someone that is Yehudi from the word Moide, he's accepting, he's devoted to Hashem, and he denies idolatry. Whoever denies Avodah Zarah, it's considered that he admits and accepts the entire Torah. Like the Alter Rebbe explains in Torah, if the Jews that were under threat during the days of Haman would have chosen to convert to the religion of the populace that they lived amongst, Haman wouldn't have done anything to them. He only decreed against those that are Yehudim, those that are holding on to their Jewish faith. They are moide in God. Rather, they did not do so. They did not accept that out of converting to the religions around them. The Alter Rebbe says that the Yidden stood in a state of self-sacrifice almost an entire year from when the decrees came out on Sivan until the following Adar. That's how long they were under this threat of death. So it's one thing that to be on the Rebbe elaborates upon this. It's one thing to be on the threat of death for one moment, and a Yid has a knee-jerk reaction and says, "No, I'm not giving up my Yiddishkeit, even if it means my life is forfeit." But to dwell on it for months and months, days and days, weeks and weeks on end, that the end is coming, and to not give into that and decide to leave Yiddishkeit, no foreign thought arose in their mind to, heaven forbid, consider converting to the religions around them. So this is what the Rebbe says, that we see two extremes. On the one hand, it was a bodily salvation. On the other hand, it was linked with a spiritual commitment that was very powerful as well. So the Rebbe is first going to emphasize the difference between Yehudi and Yisrael. And then from that, we're going to get into what the lesson is for us. Second paragraph on the bottom of the page, Ois Hey. Which first explained the reason that specifically in the Megillah Yidden are called Yehudim, not the way they're called in general as Bnei Yisrael, etc. The difference between the term Yisrael and Yehudi is Yisrael moira al inyan harosh. The idea of Yisrael indicates the concept of a head, like it's brought down in Sfarim, Yisrael oisius li rosh, that the word Yisrael is made up of letters that can be switched around in an anagram and can come up with the two words of li rosh, to me a head. So Yisrael indicates the Yidden being in a level of intellect. Shezeu kifi shebnei Yisrael heim b'mayim u'matzav hakosher. This is connected. The idea of the name Yisrael is when the Yidden are in such a state and situation that's connected with the quality of intellect. The Yehudi Moiral Inyan Haida, as opposed to Yehudi, indicates the idea of accepting and admitting, meaning it's not about my intellect. I accept and admit to something beyond my understanding. The idea of Haidah is that the idea of intellect doesn't matter. Does he understand or not? Also, the feeling of the heart doesn't matter. Also, but rather also when the intellect and the feeling of the heart are the opposite of what Hashem wants, still in all he accepts and does not what his mind tells him to do, not what his heart tells him to do, but what he's supposed to do. This was said last week's Parsha Mishpatim. The preparation for the receiving of the Torah and fulfilling its mitzvahs was through prefacing and saying, we will do before we will hear and understand. He accepts upon himself to do, even if he doesn't understand. That is the content of the concept of Haidah, of accepting and believing. So let's skip over a page to the second paragraph on the next page, Ois Vav. V'zeu inyan Yemei Purim. This is the idea of the days of Purim. Shebachol ha-Megillah nikraim bnei Yisrael v'shem Yehudim. Throughout the entire Megillah, Yidden are called Yehudim. Mitzad inyan ha'edah, because of the idea of ha'edah, meaning shemoidim b'chol ha-Torah kula, they accept and they admit to the entire Torah. Ba'ofen shel akdamas nasal and nishma, in such a way that they preface, we will do, before we will understand and listen and hear. The Indians are negea gam lekiyum haguf shel bnei Yisrael. So here the Rebbe says an amazing thing. This commitment that a Yid has, which goes beyond intellect, this commitment of the most basic manner, this affects and matters for the actual existence of the Jewish body. Ka'amarli, like we said earlier, Shanes to Purim Watzal Saguf, that the miracle of Purim was saving the body. The fact that they stood in a state of self-sacrifice, in a state of admitting and accepting without any logic, like the Alter Rebbe said in Torah, that they didn't even consider, no far and outside thought entered their mind to, heaven forbid, assimilate and accept the religions of the people around them. So that itself, that was the merit in which they were saved. That was the cause that brought their body to be saved, because they had this total and complete acceptance of Hashem beyond intellect. And that's the lesson and directive from the miracle of the days of Purim to every single Jew. Skip the parentheses. Even concerning bodily matters, it's demanded from him the passion and to act in a way of admitting and accepting. So now the Rebbe is going to bring a very simple example, which matters in the topic also of Bitochon and so on, about how we're supposed to act when it comes to our bodily needs, to making a living and so on. So he says in Ois Zayin, the idea behind this is, L'chora yachal Yehudi litain seemingly, a Yid could say, makes sense concerning matters of the soul, in Yoni Torah mitzvahs, matters of Torah mitzvahs. It matters that the person should act in a way of admitting and accepting without resorting to intellect, going beyond the intellect. But when we talk about bodily matters, Yoni Brias or Refuah, matters of health, matters of healing, in such cases, the Torah itself directs us that we're supposed to go to a doctor to seek medical advice. Or another case when it comes to bodily needs. When it comes to things and making a living, in Yoni Mischar, when it comes to business, that itself Torah directs that we have to follow the customs of business people in that area. It has to do with when you make a deal, so it's assumed that you're making it, that the language you use is following the type of custom of how they make a deal in that particular place. So the Rebbe says, if I'm dealing with bodily things, physical things, parnasa, health, so that all that should be brought into it is the doctor, is the businessman, nothing spiritual. What does it matter in such topics? The passion concerning admitting and accepting Hashem in a way of prefacing we will do before we'll understand. So the Rebbe says, concerning this comes a lesson from the days of Purim. The existence of the body of a Jew, meaning their physical well-being, their health, their sustenance, their parnasa. It depends on the fact Toli Bakach Shagam Hanagosi Binyoni Aguf, that also the way he acts in matters of the body, he ba'ofen shenikar olav shu Yehudi. It has to be recognizable that this is a Jewish person that's seeking out health. It's a Jewish person that's involved in making a living in business. Shemoida b'chol ha'torah kula, he accepts, and he's totally devoted to the entire Torah. Ukedeli is moida b'chol ha'torah kula, so to be able to accept and to admit in the entire Torah, tzarech li is kaifer b'avodah zarah. He needs to deny foreign service. What does that mean, foreign service? The literal meaning means idolatry. But on a deeper meaning, ka'pirush apnimi, like the inner meaning of avodah zarah, foreign service, shu kaifer b'chol avodah shizara liyehudi. He denies and goes against any type of service that is foreign for a Jew. For example, kol tenua shalahat binyonei ha'olam hizara liyehudi. Any movement that expresses a passion for worldly things, that is already foreign for a Jew. Why is that foreign to a Jew? Because a Jew is not of this world. Therefore, passion for worldly things is foreign to him. Since a Jew is a part of Hashem above Mamish, there's no reason for him to be invested and embedded in worldly matters. Should be passionate concerning them. Like it says in Chayvus Halavavis. Just like fire and water cannot dwell together, so too the love of Hashem cannot rest together with the love, in other words, passion for worldly things. So a Jew, despite the fact that he needs to engage with the world, despite the fact he needs to seek doctor's advice, despite the fact that he needs to be involved in parnasa, but he cannot be in such a way where that is what his passion is. He says at the top of the next page, this perspective, not to be passionate, is not just about the worldly matters, not just because his neshama is a chelik el kamemal, because his soul is a part of Hashem, but also it's also from the body's perspective. All of Nemar concerning the body, it says, I am Hashem your God, that I took you out of the land of Mitzrayim. It's only, the Rebbe is going to explain, that a Jew's body that was taken out of Mitzrayim. His neshama was never in Mitzrayim. His neshama was never in Golus. Since the neshama initially never went into exile. And like the famous thing that the Rebbe always quotes, the Frierdiker Rebbe, that the Frierdiker Rebbe said on his way to on the train station being sent into exile, that only our bodies were sent into exile and not our souls were sent into exile. Therefore, a guy cannot tell a Yid what should be his soul commitment. He cannot limit a Yid's observance of Torah mitzvahs. And it's understood that the part of a Yid that was in the exile, Mitzrayim, what part was in exile? It was only the body. Concerning this, it says, I am Hashem your God that took you out of the land of Mitzrayim. Even concerning the body that was in the land of Mitzrayim. Hashem says, I am Hashem your God, meaning what does it mean, your God? That the idea of the name Elokim means the powers, the one who possesses all powers. That means in this case, who is your body's power? Who is your body's life force? Who anoichi avaya is, I am avaya zoi kol mitziyusoi. That's the entire being of the body of a Jew that went into exile. So, if the entire being of a Jew's body that went into exile is Havaya, is Hashem himself, The Kivin Shekain, since that's the case, 3 paragraphs on the top, how they move, and it's understood. She'ein Yehudi shaychus iminyonei ha'olam. A Jew has no association with worldly matters. She'hei mebchinas avodah zarah. They are a foreign service, davar shu zareh love, something that is foreign to the Jew. Only because his soul descended down here below and was enclosed in a physical body. Why did it do so? Why did it become enclosed in the physical body? To reveal deeper soul powers that would not have been revealed if it wouldn't have had the challenge and opportunity to come down into the physical body. Because only when the neshama is down here in the body does it have free choice whether to follow Torah mitzvahs. And now when it follows Torah mitzvahs out of its free choice, so like it says, you'll choose life, so then it reveals deeper powers of the soul than what it had when it was above and there was no other choice except to follow godliness. So because the neshama was embedded in the physical body down here so that the neshama should be able to reach higher levels, so therefore the person must be involved in worldly matters. The way he's involved in worldly matters should not be in a way of desire and passion, because that is not what the true being of a Yid is, that denies Avodah Zarah and admits and accepts the entire Torah, in a way of Haidah beyond intellect. This is also the content of the saying of my father-in-law, the leader of our generation, the Frierdiker Rebbe, said in the name of the Tzemach Tzedek, the third Lubavitcher Rebbe, Shashem Yehudim, that the name Yehudim is written many times. It's written in the Megillah with 2 Yuds after the Dal, between the Dal and the Mem. Moiral Eser Koiches Shal Nefshal Lekis, when Eser Koiches Shal Nefshal Bam, it indicates twice 10. Yud is the numerical equivalent of 10. So you have the 10 times 2, because you have the 10 soul powers of the godly soul. You have 10 soul powers of the animal soul. That the idea of a Yehudi is in both together. So too concerning the soul and the body, there is no division, there is no separation between them. So it's not just that the animal soul could be in a way of Yehudi and accepting and doing things without any intellect and without the passion of the world. So too, concerning the soul and the body that's not separated, can move in al pi divrei Gemara Sanhedrin sha'avoidihi ba'ofen sha'aguf yesh lechelu b'kiyum mitzvah. That it's understood from the Gemara Sanhedrin that the way a person does service is that the body also shares in the fulfillment of the mitzvah. That's why the reward when Mashiach comes is going to be Tchias HaMesim, the resurrection of the dead, and therefore the neshama is going to rise up together with the body, because the body also has a part in the performance of the mitzvah. Since the reward is a result of our actions and service now, so that means that the body of a Jew is also involved in the Torah mitzvahs. So too in the topic that we're talking about now, also in bodily matters, in matters of the physical body, like health, like listening to doctors, like making a living and so on, business. A Jew acts in such a way that he denies Avodah Zarah, and he admits to the entire Torah. Last paragraph on the page. That's the general directive of the days of Purim. That's the common denominator, like we said, of the entire month of Adar. And not just the entire month of Adar, but like the Rebbe said at the beginning part of the Farbrengen, the part that we skipped. Hachel, Shabbos, Mevarchim, Adar, beginning from the Shabbos, which we benched the month of Adar. That's the time when we have to begin to meditate on this message of Adar. That the following message is Shagam Hatzolos Haguf, also the salvation of the body. Kshura Ima Inyan Shal Yehudim is connected with the idea of being someone that's Yehudi. What Yehudi is, it's denying Avodah Zarah and admitting in the entire Torah in a way of accepting it all and not being passionate in worldly matters. Top of the last page, Pashtus, and simply put, in all matters, Gam bin Yonim Parnasa, Misker, also in matters of making a living and business. Tzarich lisnaik ba'oifen, he has to act in such a way, that he knows, that the reason why he's involved in it is rak beglal sha'atoira emeres uberacha v'ayalokecha b'chol shetasa. It's only because the Torah says that Hashem will bench you in everything that you do. Hainu sha'ikir u'bichas Hashem. The main thing is the bracha of Hashem. V'yisaskus binyonim agashim b'chol shetasa, and the involvement in physical matters in everything you do. Eina ela kli v'levush l'bichas Hashem. It's only a vessel and a garment for Hashem's bracha. Like it was also in the days of Purim, where though we had to do physical hishtadlus, we had to engage with the physical world, but we realized it wasn't the physicality of the world that was responsible. That Esther made a vessel and a garment in the laws of nature, to go to Achashverosh and to start placing her request before him. But the garment in the natural means it was only successful only after the decree was nullified above through the activities that the Yidden did beforehand in Torah mitzvahs, that Mordechai gathered all the children and they learned together and so on and so forth. When the Yidden did all the things and the Yidden fasted 3 days and so on, when the Yidden did tshuva, that is what caused that her ishtadlus would help. The same thing, that we have to realize it's Hashem's bracha. When we do what we're supposed to do, we draw down Hashem's bracha, then it's b'chol asher ta'aseh. The Rebbe in other places adds, in many places, the point that Esther fasted, which means that she didn't put her whole confidence in the physical. By her, it was about the spiritual. Therefore, she was even willing to fast, though fasting would decrease her beauty and therefore would decrease her chances from the natural means to find favor in Achashverosh's eyes. Still in all, she fasted because that indicated that her belief was that it wasn't the actual approach to Achashverosh that would do it, but rather it was Hashem's help that would help, but she just has to make a keli b'derech hateva. In the same way, it says, if Hashem's bracha is there because we are acting and doing things in accordance with Hashem's wishes, then anything you put your hand to, it's not dependent whether you did this business deal or you took this medication. Hashem will send the refuah, and Hashem will send the health, and Hashem will send the parnasa in anything you do, because it's not the thing that I'm doing that brings the bracha, but it's my connection to Hashem, my being a Yehudi in a way that I'm accepting Hashem that brings down Hashem's brachas. When a Yid acts in such a way, there's no reason for him to become affected by and excited because of the nations that are around him. The Adar, but just the opposite occurs, like it happened by the miracle of Purim. The fear of the Yidden fell upon the nations instead of the other way around. And the Yidden had light and joy and happiness and glory, physically, in the literal sense. Why? Because there was the spiritual component. Because they had, like we said before, they had the reason for Hashem's bracha. They had light and joy and happiness and glory in the spirituality of it, like the Gemara says, Kedivra Gemara Oira Zutaira. When it says that the Yidden had light, that's referring to Torah. The Simcha, when it says that the Yidden had joy, it's referring to Yom Tov. The Sasen, that's referring to Milah, it's talking about the Bris. The Ikar and glory, Eilut Tefillin. And therefore, since they had it in the spiritual, so it manifested and occurred in the physical as well. As it was in the redemption of Purim, but in such a state and situation where there were still Achashverosh servants, and even while they were Achashverosh servants, they were so successful and so on. One redemption is brought close and made close to another redemption. Megula's Purim, Megula's Pesach. We go from the redemption of Purim into the redemption of Pesach. Allah Namar, concerning the redemption of Pesach, it says, like your days going out of the land of Mitzrayim, I will show you wonders. Begula, Amitas Vashlema, the Mashiach Tzidkenu, Bekar of Mamish, and the true and complete redemption through Mashiach Tzidkenu, speedily